You really don't think I'll come in, do you? Michael's voice carried through the thin door, laced with the kind of playful arrogance that always made my stomach twist in ways I couldn't explain. I froze, towel barely wrapped around my waist, dripping water onto the tiled floor. He wasn't serious. Michelle loved to tease, sure, but he'd never crossed a line before. Still, there was something about the tone in his voice that made my chest tighten, half a joke, half a challenge. It had started as any other afternoon. Michelle and I had met for a workout at the small gym near his apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, just a few free weights, a treadmill, and a cramped locker room with bad lighting, but it had become our spot. Michelle, with his easy charm and broad-shouldered confidence, had always been the life of the gym, cracking jokes with strangers and offering unsolicited fitness advice. For me, those sessions were less about fitness and more about being near him. Michelle had a way of making everyone feel like the center of his attention, but when it was just the two of us, it felt different. Special. I wasn't naive, though. Michelle was straight. Very straight. I'd seen him parade through a string of girlfriends, each one more effortlessly gorgeous than the last. Yet, there were moments, small, fleeting moments, that made me question everything. The way his hand would linger on my shoulder a beat too long, or how his eyes would find mine during a joke, like he was searching for approval. It was enough to make me wonder, but never enough to believe. After our workout, Michelle had announced he'd forgotten something in his car and left me alone in the locker room. Grateful for the solitude, I'd stripped down, letting the cool air sting my overheated skin before heading to the showers. I hadn't expected him to come back so quickly, much less with that teasing tone in his voice. "You're not actually thinking about it, are you?" I called back, trying to sound casual, though my voice cracked slightly. The door creaked open, and Michael's laugh followed. "Relax, man. I'm just grabbing my water bottle." I turned instinctively, forgetting for a moment that I was completely exposed. Michelle stopped in his tracks, his grin fading as his eyes widened. For a second, neither of us moved. The air between us thickened, charged with a tension I couldn't name. My first instinct was to grab the towel and cover myself, but for some reason, I didn't. Instead, I stood there, frozen, as Michael's gaze flickered from my face to the rest of me and back again. "Sorry," he muttered, turning his back as quickly as he'd come in. I should have knocked." "It's fine," I said, though my voice came out quieter than I intended. Michelle lingered by the door, his hand on the handle like he was deciding whether to leave. "You've, been working out more, huh?" he said, his tone awkward, almost nervous. I laughed, though it sounded forced even to my ears. "Something like that?" He nodded, still not turning around. "I mean, yeah, you look good." The words hung in the air like smoke, suffocating and intoxicating all at once. It wasn't like Michelle to stumble over his words, let alone offer a compliment like that. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, and I couldn't decide if it was from embarrassment or something else entirely. "Thanks," I said, pulling the towel around my waist as I stepped closer to the bench. "Guess all those gym sessions with you are paying off." Michelle turned then, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity I hadn't seen before. "Yeah," he said softly. "I guess they are." For a moment, it felt like the entire world had narrowed to just the two of us. The locker room faded away, the awkwardness of the situation replaced by something heavier, more profound. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Michelle finally broke the silence, clearing his throat and shifting back into his usual easygoing demeanor. "Anyway, I'll let you finish up." Didn't mean to interrupt. As he left, the door clicking shut behind him, I was left standing there, towel clutched tightly in my hands, heart racing in a way I hadn't felt in years. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd been wrong about Michelle all along. "So, about earlier." Michael's voice trailed off, breaking the silence in his living room. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, but his eyes avoided mine. I didn't know how to respond. Hours had passed since the locker room incident, yet the air between us was still charged. I had agreed to come over for dinner after Michelle's insistence, but now I wasn't sure if it had been a good idea. I shifted on the couch, clutching the edge of my glass for stability. "What about it?" I asked, feigning nonchalance. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I mean, it was unexpected. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable or anything. Uncomfortable? I laughed, though it sounded hollow. You're the one who barged in on me naked. I should be the one apologizing for giving you an eyeful. Michael's lips twitched, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. That's not what I meant, he said softly. The room felt smaller with every passing second. The sound of the clock ticking on the wall was deafening, yet neither of us moved to fill the silence. I wanted to let it go, to brush it off as nothing more than an awkward moment between friends, but something in Michael's expression stopped me. He looked conflicted, not embarrassed or annoyed, but like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to jump. I've been thinking, he said finally, his words slow and deliberate. About us. My heart skipped a beat. Us? Michael's eyes flicked to mine, and I saw something there I hadn't expected: vulnerability. Yeah. I mean, I've always been comfortable around you, but lately, it feels different. Like, I catch myself noticing things I shouldn't. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him correctly. What are you trying to say? He stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. I don't know, he admitted, his voice tinged with frustration. I'm not even sure why I'm bringing it up. It's just ever since earlier, I can't get it out of my head. Michelle, you're straight, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Yeah, I know, he snapped, spinning to face me. And I'm in a relationship too. Believe me, I know how wrong this is. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Michelle's girlfriend Sophia flashed through my mind. I'd met her a few times. She was sweet, kind, and oblivious to the undercurrent of tension between Michael and me. The thought of her made my stomach twist with guilt. Then why are we having this conversation? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because I can't stop thinking about you, he admitted, his voice cracking. I know it's messed up, okay? I know it's not fair to you or to her, but I had to say it. I stood, the space between us suddenly unbearable. Do you hear yourself, Michelle? This isn't some harmless crush. You're talking about betraying someone who trusts you. He flinched, but he didn't back down. I know. And maybe I deserve to feel like crap for it, but I can't pretend anymore. I'm not even sure what this is, if it's curiosity or something more, but it's real. I can't deny that. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Part of me wanted to give in, to take the chance I'd secretly wished for, but the rational part of me knew better. This wasn't just about us, it was about the people who could get hurt in the process. Michelle, I said carefully, I can't be your experiment. If this is just some phase or something you're trying to figure out, I won't be a part of it. His shoulders sagged, and he looked away. It's not like that, he murmured. I wouldn't risk everything if it was. The room grew quiet again, the weight of unspoken truths pressing down on us. I wanted to believe him, to trust that this wasn't some fleeting curiosity, but the stakes were too high. Maybe you need to figure out what you really want, I said finally, stepping toward the door. But until you do, we can't keep doing this. Michelle looked up, his expression a mixture of regret and desperation. So that's it? You're just walking away? I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I'm not walking away, I said, my voice steady. I'm giving you space to make the right choice. Whatever that is. And with that, I left, my heart heavy and my mind racing. As much as I wanted to turn back, I knew this was the only way to protect us both. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. I've made a decision, Michelle said, his voice firm yet tinged with hesitation, as if bracing himself for my reaction. I glanced up from my coffee, the familiar ache in my chest returning at the sight of him. It had been a week since I'd walked out of his apartment, leaving behind the chaos of our unspoken feelings. Now, sitting across from him in a quiet corner of the cafe we used to frequent, I felt both anxious and guarded. Okay, I said evenly, keeping my emotions in check. I'm listening. Michelle shifted in his seat, his hands clasped tightly around his cup. You were right, he began, meeting my gaze with a rare vulnerability. About everything. About Sophia, about me needing to figure out what I want, about not dragging you into it. I nodded, though his words offered little comfort. So, what have you figured out? He exhaled, his shoulders slumping slightly. Sophia and I talked. I told her everything, not about us, he clarified quickly, but about how I've been feeling. She deserves honesty, even if it hurts. I felt a pang of guilt at the mention of her name. How did she take it? She was upset, obviously, he admitted, his voice heavy. But she also said she'd rather know now than later. We decided to take a break. The weight of his words settled between us, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Relief? Sympathy? Anger? And what about us? I asked finally, the question trembling on my lips. Michel leaned forward, his eyes searching mine. That's what I'm here to figure out. Look, I know I've been confusing, and I hate that I put you in this position. But these feelings, they're not just going away. I can't explain them, but they're real. Real doesn't make them right, I said softly, my tone more resigned than accusatory. Michel, you've spent your whole life as one thing, straight, confident, sure of yourself. I don't think you're ready to throw all that away just because you're confused right now. I'm not confused, he said firmly, his jaw tightening. I'm scared, yeah, but not confused. Being around you feels different. It's not just some phase or experiment. It's you, Ren. Hearing my name fall from his lips like that made my chest tighten. For so long, I dreamed of this moment, of Michael saying the words I never thought he'd say. But now that they were here, they felt fragile, like glass threatening to shatter under the weight of reality. I can't be the reason you implode your entire life, I said, my voice breaking slightly. You need time, Michel. Time to figure out who you are and what you really want without dragging me down with you. He looked at me with an intensity that made my resolve falter. What if I already know what I want? Then prove it, I said simply. Not with words, but with actions. Show me you're willing to do the work, to face whatever comes next. Because this isn't something you can take back if you change your mind. Michel fell silent, his expression unreadable as he processed my words. For a moment, I wondered if he'd push back, insist that he was ready. But instead, he nodded slowly, a flicker of determination in his eyes. You're right, he said finally. I need to sort myself out before I can ask you to believe in me. But I'm not giving up on this, not on us. The sincerity in his voice stirred something inside me, a cautious hope I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. I'm not asking you to give up, I said, my tone gentler now. I'm just asking you to be sure, for both our sakes. Michel reached across the table, his hand brushing mine in a gesture that was both hesitant and grounding. Thank you, he said, his voice soft but resolute, for giving me the chance to figure this out, for not walking away completely. I nodded, pulling my hand back reluctantly. Just don't take too long. Life doesn't wait forever. His lips curved into a faint smile, one that held both promise and uncertainty. I won't, he said. As we stood to leave, I felt a strange sense of closure, even if the story wasn't finished. Michel had a journey ahead of him, one I couldn't take for him. But for the first time, I believed he might actually be willing to take it. And as I walked away, I allowed myself to hope just a little that when he was ready, I'd still be here. Waiting.